Come to Brazil? Nah, come and level up your caffeine source more like. Now, one of my favourites used to be the best. It's yellow and black. It's of course citrus lemonade, isn't it? I wish it was the best now, kind of like Navi, but it isn't, is it? Because the best right now is obviously Faze Clan, which for me would be Guacamole Game of Art 9000, because in the same way as it has a silly name, you don't quite know what to expect, probably not strawberry and lime, the actual flavour. You probably look at Faze Clan and think it's just a moron, org of lifestyle bullshit, like 12-year-old Zoomers playing fucking Fortnite and shite games like that, or fucking washed out boomers going like, oh my god, 360 no scope swag YOLOing on your bitch ass on fucking, I don't even know the names of any of them, mainline or something. I don't know the name of any COD maps, mate. There's one like an airport terminal, I'm guessing. More like that. Imperial, they're more like a Red Bull. They were only good about 10 years ago. They only last about half an hour. Don't pack much of a punch. Well, you can ask Kirby about that, I guess. And it's only really drunk at this point in time by silly little kids that don't know any better, or stupid old boomers who don't know what we've advanced the technology with, because Game of Sop's obviously sugar-free, isn't it? Delicious. Doesn't taste all chemically. And you know what? Do you want a real discount? It's a pun there, because it's obviously the currency in Brazil, isn't it? Use the code Thorin, THORIN. You all know the name and how it's spelt. You're obsessed with my Twitter because you're a brain-dead loser. And you know what? 10% off your order at gamersubs.gg. Not bad, eh? 1% for every IQ point you have. Now, for this major, obviously, I don't work the major. I'm not making shoulder con. I'm not actually at the position yet with resources in my upcoming company where that's something I can do. But I thought I'd put together a little video where I just go over some of the big narratives for this tournament, for the team, for the org, for the players, key aspects, like how far would they have to go, what would have to happen. That would be an interesting little angle for you here. So let's start. I'm going to start, and essentially I've generally ordered these by what I think is the most important. So I'm going to start with Navi, Nartus Vincer, the reigning major champions. By the way, yet to lose a map at this major. They're 2-0. They won 10 maps and wrote the last major. Already insane stuff, but obviously they're not quite as strong at this major. Now, obviously, it's basically impossible to fairly talk about this team without mentioning there is a conflict in their home country of Ukraine that has obviously caused a lot of disruption ever since it began in some of time in February. It was around time in Katowice playoffs. You could see it took a toll on Navi, the team. They haven't looked as good. s1mple's still incredible. He's still the best player. Even he's not quite as epic as he was in past years, even though he's still very good. But some of the rest of the team has fallen off, including, by the way, some of the Russian players. So it's been a little bit up and down, but they're still an elite team. They're not my number one team to win the major, but it'd be great if they would, right? Narratively, they have the most charged there in terms of they could create an era, maybe. They could do some things people have never done. The problem is, because of that whole conflict, it's now actually caused this roster to have uncertainty. And if people don't know, Navi's pretty famous for keeping rosters for a long time. And this roster, you'd run with this roster for another year or more. Remember, he got bit, who's a young guy. Like, he could potentially even become a star player himself in the future if electronic fades a little bit. So to me, they wouldn't have changed this roster if they didn't have to. But they may well have to due to some of the Russian players. So I think right now, this major, they are the ones that need to win the major the most. Even more than a karrigan, because karrigan's going to get other chances perhaps. Navi, for this specific 5-man lineup, this might be the second and only major they ever compete at together. So if you can go back to back, look, you're not as good a team as you were during that run at the latter part of last year, but imagine how amazing that would be. Remember, the only teams to ever go back to back are the Fnatic team, the Luminosity SK team, and Astralis. I mean, Astralis technically did it twice, right? It did 3 in a row. So this would be big time stuff if Navi could do that. Not only because, look at those teams. There's no CIS team there. The best CIS team ever in CSGO wasn't Gambit. It was obviously the Navi that was with Guardian a few years back. And you know what? Yeah, it wasn't the best. It didn't win the majors. It didn't win the biggest tournaments generally. Also, if you're s1mple, even though you will potentially have many more majors, you might even still be the best player for a few more years, you're going to have an all-time great career. Probably no one can overtake you as the GOAT no matter what their accomplishments are. But tell you what, I would feel so aggrieved. I would have so much focus to win this major. Because think how much bullshit it must feel like after all those years of being on lesser teams, then can't get in the proper team, then can't get the right players in, and the right teammates, and the right help, and the right system, and the right coach, and moving the old pieces out slowly. After all that and playing at elite level no one's ever played at for years and years and years and years, like almost half a decade at this point point in time. After all that, you get the teammates, you get the team, you get the rookie, you get the coach, you get the org, you get everything you want. You even get role players like a fucking Russian Zipnix in Perfecto. Like these, this is insane. You get all that, and now some external stuff, nothing to do with the game, might threaten it, might ruin it, might disrupt it all for you. It might even mean, by the way, look, I suspect if they don't play for Navi, they're not playing any Western team, but there might even be a world where maybe one of these players goes and plays another team. You have to play against them. How much would that suck? When this was supposed to be your time. This is supposed to be when you win your multiple majors, where you take an era to add to that Grand Slam, where you break records, like you maybe go undefeated at this major as well. You do things that people have never done. That way, you get the treatment of all the setup, all the chance to be the best and get the trophies, like they did for the greats in history who did that, for Coldzera, for Olaf Meister, for Get Right, for Device. That's why they were able to stack their majors. Instead, you had part of that window and it's being shot on you, seemingly, if you don't win this major. Then obviously, I alluded to it before, no one knows what the fate of these Russian players are in this org or in esports in general. So there might be a world where Electronic, Boomich, and Perfecto go. Who the fuck knows, right? I mean, the rumours so far were mainly just Electronic and maybe Electronic and Boomich. I mean, they obviously have a whole situation with spouses and whatnot over there. I think any of those would be wild. I think the Boomich one you could maybe survive, but you're still going to find someone who's right caller. Who's that going to be? Jerry or something? If you could sign a Russian player, it's not impossible. Don't really know you're getting in Ukraine necessarily. Electronic will be a massive loss. Like, he hasn't been as good now, but he used to get the land buff. He was a monster at the last major. He's been one of the main reasons they won the last major. Perfecto is obviously become a specialist who was so crucial to this team. And if you're someone like an Electronic, there's the Yekindar factor. He's sitting over there, able to speak Russian, one of the best entry fraggers in the world, very young, hungry, disciplined, has played against you in a rival team. This would be a perfect signing if you have to make it. So if you're those players, you're also thinking, even if I stay, maybe there's a world where I get replaced anyway, because it's more hassle to deal with a Russian player than to deal with someone from Latvia, which isn't even involved in the conflict if people don't know. Then finally, and this is just tragic generally in the more historical sense, the CIS region had its first truly all-time great dominant Counter-Strike team since Navi 1.6. And the cool thing about this one is, remember, most of Navi and CSGO was with Zeus. This doesn't even have any of the original players, except this has the modern version of the truly great players. And yet it's even headed up by Blade, the original mastermind of the CIS region. This is a perfect storyline. What an amazing one. And it's going to be crushed potentially if they don't win this major. I mean, that one speaks for itself. That is an enormous narrative for me. After that is, of course, Faze Clan. And, of course, Faze Clan for karrigan. Now, look, the Faze Orgs never won. And they certainly threw a bit of money around, although they tended to never fully get that fifth spot fixed when karrigan wasn't there. But they've thrown around big money for star players, etc. They've had the Guardians, the Colderas, the fucking Nikos, now Twists, Robs. They've had some amazing players come through the doors. Only been in one major final. Yes, arguably the major that was the most like won by the team that still lost. Yeah, there's all that, but they didn't win it, unfortunately. So if you really want to talk about this angle, it's got to be about karrigan. This is a guy who in CSGO has been a truly great leader since 2015. He has been in some amazing squads. He has been in the TSM. He has been in Faze Clan. He has been now in another version of Faze Clan. He even made a half-decent mouse sports team, a fucking world beater, one of the teams contending for everything. But he's never won the major. He's only been in one final even. So when you consider what a unique way to win your major this would be, he is 32 years old. That is 7 years after he first had a team that might have been able to win a major, always among the favourites. He's been doing it the last few years with international rosters, not even from his home country. Remember, no international roster where they all speak a second language has ever won a major. It's never happened in CSGO. And this one doesn't even have Nico. Remember, if he wins with s1mple, Nico, in the modern day, I'd say year two from now, Ziwu, then someone could always go, you had Michael Jordan, you had this guy. You can't say that about Robs. Look, Robs in a few years might be an absolute monster, might be like the best player in the whole world. He isn't now. He's a very good player, but for me, he's just a very good, he just tips over in the superstar play. He's not that like one man carrying the same way the others are at the elite level. He can be at the mouse level, obviously. So to me, I think it's even more impressive if he wins it without Nico. Nico was a fucking beast back then. Then you consider the aforementioned Robs. He's wasted his time in mouse sports. He had his chances in 2018 and on. Now he's had to have the hard times, the fallow years. Finally, he's back with karrigan. It's his time to win. He wants, by the way, to get his major. You think he doesn't want to have a major ahead of Ziwu and Nico and all these other people in his generation? That'd be fucking awesome. And people before his generation, skip the queue, right? Let's start this guy's Hall of Fame accomplishments now on the resume. Then how about Twists? If he wins this title, then along with Stewie, he becomes the only other American to win a Grand Slam and to win a major. And obviously, if you're a former Team Liquid player, it's a massive deal to win that major. You just never got it done. It just never happened for you, even when you felt like it should. So if you're Twists, you really can start, accomplishment-wise, going for that title you want of best NA player ever. Obviously, it's Elysia's right now, but you could go for it if you go ham. Now, I think you've got to do a lot player-wise, have a lot more years of consistency, but this is the team to do it in, right? This could be the beginning of something really special. And again, an NA player wins an international roster, and not mainly English-speaking. By the way, I guess technically Twists ruins the Faze angle now, doesn't he? Because his first language is English, but whatever. We'll make a joke and say it's Canadian, and they didn't always understand him, what he was talking about, or whatever the fuck. And then obviously, finally, you have Rain, Mr. Faze, the guy who's never ever left the team. If he finally wins after all those years, it's just going to feel like, right, that's the reward for your loyalty. That's the reward for sacrificing, for doing the bitch roles, for letting other stars carry. When, by the way, you could have been one of the stars in that 2 or 3 players like you were at one point in time. And eventually you win as in a supportive role, but in the same team without ever leaving. What a cool storyline. Like, look, I wish he'd left and gone elsewhere and had better chances. But since he didn't, let's finish this one out in a cool fashion, right? Then how about, I think G2's going to be next up there. And the reason why is this. This is a team built to win. They already had a lineup that was second last time and maybe even almost fluked the major final. Then obviously they had that run where they were winning lands. I mean, it was mainly IM Winter, obviously. They were actually able to fucking... Oh, no, sorry, they didn't win IM Winter. That was Vitality, sorry. The point is they were still a very good team on the land circuit. They were one of the top teams. The problem is, this squad, they spent money. They went and got the big names. They didn't even settle for like, I don't know, they got the guys they wanted. So, even so though... Does anyone remember? They alluded to the idea they didn't want Rops as roles would overlap with Hunter too much. Tell you what, if Faze Clan wins this major now and you don't win, and God forbid you don't even make top 4, you might regret not taking Rops on that one. You might think, yeah, maybe if we'd had Rops as well, that's the super team that gets us over the line. Then how about this? I think before even Nico, you got to say Carlos. Carlos Ocelot of G2 desperately wants to be the best in CSGO because his team's never really been it, have they? And so as a result, if he wins, his trash talking will go to the next level. It'll be so much fun for the next few months. Now, obviously, Nico is an enormous narrative for this major because in the GOAT race, which he's one of the rare players that's in, he's got the, play to make an argument for himself. Doesn't have the accomplishments now that s1mple's got what he's got. Doesn't have it compared to coldzera and to Olaf Meister in terms of accomplishments to talk about here, not in raw level of play. So he's got to catch up in some way, right? Especially now, s1mple used to be in the same boat, like they were the greatest, but they just didn't win. Well, sorry, s1mple won now. So now here's the problem. He had his own s1mple-esque excuse at the last major because he didn't have the team around him, right? That team shouldn't have won the major. And he was hard carrying. He's now got the team around him. This is like when he had those Faze Clan lineups with karrigan. So you can't waste this window, in my opinion. You're not going to get tons and tons of windows every few years to win majors and be the best player ever. So it's got to be now. And he's finally getting his game together for this major. He's got the help around him now. It's got to happen. Now is when it's got to be. Look, there will be other majors, but this is a very key one to win at, quite frankly, with the team you've got around you, especially if you want people to believe you can build around Nico and win. Then how about Hunter? So they didn't get Rops, bit of pressure on Hunter, but man, if you only ask Hunter to be the second and sometimes the third best player on this team, now we can actually do something. This guy is really consistent. This guy does do the jobs people don't always want to do. This guy actually seems like he's the fucking skeleton of this team right now. So I think it would be really cool that it actually is possible for him to win a major with Nico, but not like it just has to be those two and it's the Kovacevicd. It's like, no, forget that narrative. That wasn't working. But the idea he could be part of it, now that's a cool storyline. That's a good one. That's legit. He even is playing very good Counter-Strike right now. Then how about Monacy? It's only just become a pro. Is he a legit pro? He's barely played any lands. He's an AWPer. Is he a legit LAN AWPer? He's barely played any lands, so still has to prove himself. He's doing a great job in the games thus far, but even so, by the way, he's not zero when he came out the gate. I don't even know if he's s1mple when he came out the gate. He's very good. He's up in that category, though, so he's got to prove something. I also think people are looking to Monacy, and G2 are. It's your time to be what Bit was for Navi last year. You do that sort of role, and hey, listen, mate, we can win big tournaments. We can win everything. We got Nico and Hunter there as well. Then how about if you are Jax? Your Kindar factors weighing on your mind. You're old as fuck. You're a boomer. You got really streaky style of play. Yes, you're a nice guy. Guess what? When people want trophies only, that eventually runs out. And then finally, Alexi B, because in this team, everyone has a legit storyline. He wants to win now. He has Nico and the top talent. He wasted away all those years in OG. And instantly, whenever he's supposed to win any of those finals and majors, etc., there are no more excuses if you're Alexi B. You got to start to show me something. He already has, but you got to show me more. And you got to show me you can potentially win now you got those pieces. Because if you do, tell you what, you can jump into that great in-game leader conversation very quickly. Leading a team that's not from your country, disparate players who've never won before. This would be a great angle if you were able to win this. Suddenly you get right in that interesting conversation with a lot of much more legendary names, right? You start to build a little resume for yourself. Then, let's go with outsiders, former Virtus.pro. They have a strong roster, just hasn't managed to hit its peak form very often. Could go down in history as a team with a classic style of play. The problem is they haven't got to play much more with this particular roster. Let's be real. It sounds like, despite what you see in the news, I suspect they're just playing for time or trying to drive the price up. Maybe it's the last tournament this 5-man lineup ever plays. There's the Yekindar factor. Maybe he goes elsewhere. So for me, if you win the major, look, there's no pressure on you to do it, but it would obviously be enormous for your career. Maybe all get picked up together. Also, if you are Yekindar, you're in the shop window now, mate. So not only could you win now, but a bit of an outside chance, a bit of a dark horse show, especially with how they're playing, but you can make yourself one of the biggest recruitment drive players of all time. You could be what Device should have been if he played it right last year. You could speak English and Russian. You're from not even a bad country, and like, mate, there's so much this guy could. So many teams who don't win the major will potentially get this guy. There's even a world where some team might win the major and get him, depending on if it's an RV, right? Then how about this? Heroic. You're probably thinking they should be this high up the list because they haven't made any roster moves. And because, let's be real, they haven't broken through on LAN yet. They haven't become the best team at any LAN they've been to. So quite frankly, I think this lineup must win the major. Because if they don't win the major, I'm out on this roster. I'm already out personally. Like, I would like at least one roster move. So I think semis is a minimum. Ideally the final. Otherwise, I think you've got to consider roster moves. Otherwise, you're wasting the potential of people like Stown who are monsters now. Now, Stown's basically become like the Danish Rops, hasn't he? Then how about this? Also, as well as your placing, another way this team could really show me something is in the playoffs, ideally semis or on, beat a big name team in that big pressure match on stage with the crowd, all the fucking chances to fail, and don't do it. Actually succeed and break through, and now we can start talking about the potential of this roster. Because if they don't do it at this one, I want roster move changes. Okay, the Cadian factor is obviously going to have to be mentioned, because I think even though he's in many ways the heart of the team, the problem is, as an AWPer, he's not quite good enough to win the major, and as an IGL, he's maybe good enough, but then the team's fallen apart a bit. So I think there's question marks around him. And I'll even say as well, I do think he puts a bit too much pressure on the team by trying that bad, like shit-talking style that I don't necessarily know they necessarily like. I don't think they particularly like the crowd hating him, mate. Then I'll just say finally, no one's thinking of it now, but if you don't win, one of these days, someone from Astralis is going to get smart and pony up the money and come and ask. So either that happens, or in my opinion, if you're heroic, you've got the money and you've got the good players, why don't you start pitching for a Device and try and make that last signing to go over the top? That's what heroic should be doing now. It's not a small team. It's not a budget team anymore. Even though they're on the brink of going out, a very high up narrative has to be Vitality. That's because this is another team going for broke, trying to win now by buying the Astralis trio. Dupree and Magisk, by the way. Magisk was even a major MVP, wasn't he? Dupree, one of the most consistent, highly rated players of all time. Zonic considered the greatest coach in history. You sign those players and they're not at the end of their careers, you're supposed to win. So I think actually they must win. I think if they don't win, anything beyond an impressive deep run, I think they're going to get very much scrutinised, and I think roster moves also for them. I think they're the ones that think about the Yekindar factor. Then as well, their superstar, Ziwu, he hasn't had the run at the majors that Nico and s1mple and his main peers have. This is a guy who needs to have a big major performance, whether he wins or not. By the way, winning a lot would do enormous amounts for his narrative and for his resume, especially trying to contrast with s1mple. He hasn't had the greatest result at the prestige events as Ziwu, beyond ESL1 Cologne in 2019. Then you've got Magisk and Dupree. They were once upon a time top players. Are they now? They can show us in the server, right? Zonic. He is the greatest coach ever. Tell you what, it'd be amazing to see him win without Glaive and Device though, right? That would really show something about his ability. That would be undeniable. How about Apex as an IGL? I think if it doesn't work out sooner or later, they don't get really strong as a team, you have to, if you're Zonic, consider going to the Magisk move. Why wouldn't you? Remember, you don't have to have French players in your team anymore. You're not speaking French. Then finally, Masuta. I've got to tell you, mate, beyond winning the major and somehow outperforming what your level should be, I think you're already gone. Just get your bags ready, enjoy the last few months, because you're either getting replaced by your Yekindar or someone, surely. Because if this piece gets changed, I think that could be what it needs to spark the rest of Vitality. How about Cloud9, former Gambit? The roster looks primed for real this major. Last major they weren't. They needed to get their reps in. They needed to play the Navis of the world. Now they actually look like they are ready to win a major in terms of there's not that excuse anymore. Now, true, they're still not the most experienced players. True, they still haven't won the big lands with all top teams there. True, they've even been outgamed by karrigan a whole bunch of times on LAN. Now is their time, though, to make the breakthrough is the point. Everything else is there. The window can be restarted because really it was just an online window that hadn't actually translated to LAN. We can start their window now if they're ready to finally step up to the plate because they're playing great again. They have a strong map pool again. They're looking like a tricky matchup again. There's so many factors that go in this team's favour. Shiro has a chance to become an actual legend in Counter-Strike. He's already a very skilled player with a nice year under his belt. Now do it at a major, be a major MVP or in the conversation for it. That's big boy stuff. Hobbit, if you win 2 majors on 2 different teams, entirely different teams, and you're from Kazakhstan, that is unbelievable. That is actually like a narrative. That in theory should probably be the top narrative on this whole list if you manage to do that. That's impossible. Then how about Nafani? I've actually thought he was even good on LAN, but I noticed his respect has disappeared completely since they went to LAN. People think he's one of the problems. So it's the perception. If his players don't get it done on LAN, it looks like he didn't make the right calls on LAN. Online, it was going awesome. Everything was great. He got all the praise as a genius. This is his chance to put himself in some very rare category as a Russian in-game leader. Do you know how rare it was? They were ever any quality whatsoever in CS of any version. How about Furia? I think, quite frankly, this team's been waiting long enough as an underdog team. It's got power players on the squad now who've played together for many, many years, who know their roles and don't have overlap. This is Furia's time to do something, to make a top 4 run or even be a dark horse and contend for the trophy. The team is good enough. The roster is good enough. They've got their LAN reps in even over years. Keserato and Yuri have a massive chance to make their legacy really great. Right now, they're not really comparable to the great players of all time. If they could go deep at this major, win the major, then for me, they already jump up into the category of where, like, maybe around where the Legion Nafs at. I'm talking purely in terms of resume here. Like, you've got to do more than that in terms of play. You've got to put a few more years. But they've even also had some decent years under their belt of play at this point in time. And they're very skilled players. So I think Furia's a solid dark horse. It would mean an enormous amount for a different Brazilian team, an org, to get to the top of the World Counter-Strike or to do a deep run in light of the clown show that is the Imperial Last Dance. Ironically, that Emperor has no clothes, even though Fallen sells the fuck out of clothes, including with Valve, which is a conflict of interest, isn't it? Shouldn't even be allowed to play at a major. Is a proven cheat. I won't go into the whole right now, but you get it. Your hero, proven cheater. Great, isn't it? And also accused 16-year-old kid who beat him in an online game of cheating. By the way, that 16-year-old kid, one of the best players in the world in Valorant right now. Almost like you're full of shit and a bitter loser, eh? Cheater. Brollan is an enormous factor if we talk about NIP. They have just signed him. He was always called the future of Swedish Counter-Strike. He's just the present of Swedish Counter-Strike. We're being real. One of the best riflers in Scandinavia, but he's not the best. Swedes are used to being the best. They have that arrogance bred into them. I hope he's going for the top. And obviously the dream is, he's already powered nipple. But imagine if Device comes back after this major. Imagine you do a deeper at this major. Things are looking good. It's already looking fantastic. And then you manage to get Device in with a new coaching staff. Ooh, that would set up an amazing narrative. That could really be a dark horse to be a number 1 team as well. Not so sure about the IGL angle, but hey, the rest of the pieces are really nice if you think about it. Now that Rez is back to a big deal, because here's the thing, this just shows you how narratives follow team placings. Because last year when Nip was having big placings, everyone was raving about Rez. He only had 1 or 2 big tournaments that were that epic, and everyone was making fun on the counter side. Like, you're overrating him. The joke is now, Nip hasn't been great in terms of placings this year. Rez has been very legit this year. This is a big deal. Now he needs to be looked at. He's suddenly like a sleeper carry player, star player in the game again. So that is big time stuff. So you add all these together, the team does look better anyway, even without Device. They're becoming a potentially dangerous roster. I think it's more about securing Device for the future and setting a path for yourself. But that's a massive narrative, because if that doesn't happen and Device never plays for you again or leaves, now they're just a good top 10 team. How about this one? It's mad that they're even on this list. It shows you how far this team's come. How about ENCE? You'd think, well, it's just ENCE, right? Whatever they place, that's fine. They're just a small team, small budget, not that well-known players. Spinx seems like he is one of the best players in the whole world, a top 5 player in the world. Guess what? These are the places that you show how good you are. Hades is AWPing. I will point it out again. It wasn't great in the last phase. I found it to be a little bit suspect at the big lands against the big AWPers. I want to see how he does here. I want to see if he's actually cut out to be a tier 1 AWPer now or at all. How about Snappy? He's a veteran and Counter-Strike, a veteran IGL at this point in time too. He wants some prestige success. I am kind of, you'd say 2017 was a long time ago, boys, with that heroic run. And by the way, who else was at that tournament? Oh, that's right, FNX. Funny how things work out, eh? I also think that if ENCE does a really good job here, the raw reps they get in at playing at a major, even if they don't go too deep, that could make them ready to be a real favourite for the next major. I'm talking like the third best or second best team in the world to come win. That could be on the table for next major if they do it right here and get the right lessons learned. Then how about Team Liquid? Elysian Naths have had great careers, but they ain't got that major. They don't look like they're going to get it now. They quite frankly need to show that they are superstar players, they are star players, and that people should come and play with them. And if you come and play with them, it will complete the team and you will win. Because right now, the rest of their team is questionable. Like, ochs doesn't look like he should be there. I don't even know if he wants to be there. I don't think he will be there in the future. I don't think that pickup makes any sense. I don't think they can cater to ochs or what he wants. I don't think he can get the princess treatment, and they're not smart enough to know what they did at Vitality and G2 with him in the last years. I thought it was a very shrewd approach by Malik and Xstars. They don't have a coach like that, quite frankly. How about this? OC, I still think he's very young in his career, but you have to finally show something on tier 1 lands, mate, if people want to have this hype around you as the AWPer of Team Liquid. And then there's the org. Look, their stock has dropped a lot. A lot of the big names said no to them, I've heard, in this last offseason. I mean, by the way, God forbid if NAF had left this team. Can you imagine the dregs they would have right now? Oh, that would be brutal, boys. I mean, I'm guessing at that point you just throw in, one player from fucking Complexity's lineup now? Like, that would not be a top lineup. That would be nothing, mate. How about this? You're thinking, that's a lot of teams there. They ain't just about teams. I never said it was just teams and players. How about talent? How about for ochs? If this goes well, this major, there's no Richard Lewis anymore. Machine's a commentator. Stunner's got this weird thing where, because he works with ESL, doesn't seem to get hired to the other events. Freya's does the blasts, and this is her first major getting properly hired on the desk, and she has to get some reps under her belt and learn how to do the biggest events. Quite frankly, the door's open if ochs wants to come and seriously bridge into CSGO and do the CSGO majors and a couple of big events and then do some league and worlds. I could see her doing both. I think CSGO needs her right now. We need someone who's at the top of the field like that and has the skills to bring it out of the analysts, which she's going to learn their pattern, and more time she works with them in the game, the better she's going to get. Similar to the aforementioned Freya gets all the experience. She's obviously going to be a superstar in esports in general. She can probably go beyond Counter-Strike. Just she's a Counter-Strike fan if you don't know. She's clearly walking a gilded path towards greatness, but she's still young in her career as well. She wasted all those years in the online era. She couldn't get to the lands themselves. She was in studio, but the players and the crowd weren't, were they? Then how about Maui Snake? My boy's actually come all the way to the point. He's doing the major. I wouldn't say instead of me because I could have done the major, but he's doing the major himself. Think how amazing that is. A couple of years ago, when I was hiring him at the beginning of 2020 to Flashpoint, I think that was like his second big LAN he'd ever done after Episode, which I also got him into. So it's mad to think he's working a major. If he does well at this major, I mean, look, they haven't hired Sponge as a commentator. They didn't hire Yanko, who's probably the best analyst in the world. They got Maniac, who's maybe the best, or Kai for it. Moustek has a chance to enter that category in the coming years if he gets more reps under his belt now. Then if you are Machine and Sponge, I already think you're the best in CSGO. This is a chance if you do a great job here. Just become the best in fucking esports. Remember, some of the great people in Dota got Me Too'd the fuck out the scene. In League, they break break people up all the time anyway, and plus nobody can bloody bear working for Riot for 7 years if they're actually good at their job and have any self-respect. This is your chance to go to the top. This is your chance to be what Henry G and fucking Sadikist were. It's really on the table right now, in my opinion. Even though I still do love you both as fucking host and analyst more, but that's obviously being selfish because I get to enjoy them on the desk, don't I? I even think PGL has a big narrative at play here, because I'm just going to say it. I don't think PGL should get any more majors. They've already had enough. I've seen them fuck up more than 2, even if you know some of the story behind Cluj de Poker and some of the other shit that went on, ESL1 Cologne, playoffs, etc. The shoulder content is a joke at this major. I think the ridiculous restrictions on what you have to do to play are totally unacceptable and are an immoral violation of basic human rights, in my opinion. Is a shit format where you play 2 best of ones on day 1 and you don't even know the second opponent until mere hours before or right before. And then they did bullshit hires like last minute hire Devil Walk, not an established analyst and a great analyst in the game with a lot of history, over Yanko. By the way, assuming you think Sponge is the greatest or Moses had a lot of appearances. Look, Yanko's top 3 or 4 all time. I personally think he's top 2 all time. And for now, I won't tell you who the other one is. But I think it's ridiculous you hired Devil Walk over him. I think that's absolutely outrageous. So the great thing is, as usual, there's always narratives being woven, unwoven, stitched together, torn apart, cast away, taken out of the trash. Let's see which ones actually come out to play at this major.
Hi, this is Gentride and you're watching Thorin's YouTube channel.
This video was kindly supported by Ahmed Hadjou, Matt Pugnatio, Rajcula, Kyle R, Pacy, Travis Goff, Adam Ochs, Animosity, BotPounder420, Hades, Jensen Goh, Joseph Ginsburg, Kovacevicd, Tobias Bernasconi, Thooorin, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, and a special thanks always goes out to Jerky's Minion. Would you like to find out who upcoming guests are going to be? Maybe even suggest them on the topic for my content. Maybe you want to appear in one of those lengthy esports discussions with me, or ask me a question for my video AMA. Well, if these perks, or indeed any of the others available, intrigue you, then join the Skrill Illuminati today. Put the money where your mouth is. Where? In the description box below, and the Patreon link.